Welcome to an exciting series. This is one of our series. We're going to be talking about structures that can be found in a project. But before we begin, I want you to click on the subscription button and click on the bell on the subscription button. So whenever there is a new video, you'll be the first to know. Like this video as well. Okay, we're going to be talking about structures that can be found in a project. In the last episode, we talked about the work breakdown structure. However, there is a structure known as the project structure, which is very important for a project. The project organizational structure comprises of three types of structures. One is known as the purely organizational structure. The other one is known as the functional organizational structure. And then the third one is known as the matrix organizational structure. So we're going to talk about these three structures very quickly. Now, listen up. One of the structures which we're going to talk about is the functional organizational structure, and it looks like this. I don't know if you can see very clearly, but it looks like this. Okay, I don't know if you can see clearly, but this is how it looks like. This form of organizational structure is known as the functional organizational structure. Now, what is here? We've got the project manager at the top. We've got the team members. These are the team members. If you remember, in our last series, we used the building of a house and also on our work breakdown structure. Now, this is a team member for electrical. This is a team member for plumbing, and you could put their name in here to say Peter, and you can put the name in here. But now let's look at this. If you look at the base here, you've got a foreman, you've got a foreman, you've got a foreman, you've got a foreman. Now, who is the foreman? The foremen are just general team members. Now, if you see on this organizational structure, the foreman here is able to work under electrical, and is also able to work under what? Under plumbing. Now, what does this signify? This signifies that the foreman is able to work in every area of the project. As a result of that, this is not the type of organizational structure we would want to use. This type of organizational structure, known as the functional, is it's used when a simple project is in progress. For example, I want to have a project whereby I'm going to be in control of the project. It does not separate the project from the owner. This form of organizational structure as well, if you look, as one of their advantage is that the project manager is at the top of the entire project. That is an advantage. Another advantage here is that it is cheaper to use this form of organizational structure because the team members that you see here are able to work in any functional role, saving cost for the project, which is another advantage. Another advantage that you can see here is it can be used when there is the project is not complex. There is a simple project which is in what? In progress. Okay, now let's quickly take you to the purely organizational structure, which is the most important structure for project management. Very, very important. The purely organizational structure. This is how it looks. Okay, if you look at this purely, this is known as the purely organizational structure. What have I done here? Just look very clearly. What have we done here? If you see this, you discover that the project manager is at the top. You've got the electrician as it is in the functional. You've got the plumber. But under the electrician, we've got a team member who is also an electrician as well. We've got an electrician, and under the plumber as well, we've got a team member that is also a plumber and also another plumber. Now, what has happened here? The purely organizational structure states that when a project is being separated from the owner, which means Mr. Bright, for example, I am the owner of the project. I assign the project work activity to someone else. It's being given to someone else with the right skill and knowledge. It is known as the purely organizational structure. Do not forget, the project structure shows a chain of command. It shows a line of authority. It shows a flow of authority from the top to the bottom. Now, if you see this, one advantage of the purely organizational structure is the project manager as well remains the head of the entire Of the entire project. Another advantage is each team member, the electricians and the plumbers, they've got a functional team home. This belongs to this belongs to this, which means that communication lines are properly understood. The electrician cannot go and report to the plumber as it is in the functional. If the foreman here has a problem, he can choose to report to either this or this. But for the purely organizational structure, it's slightly different. The electrician can only report to his or her functional home. Same as the plumber. They can only report to their functional home. This form of organizational structure is known as the purely organizational structure. It is a more complex and a more appropriate way in which we identify the line of authority in the project. So for every project, you will be required to understand the purely organizational structure. However, this also has some disadvantages of using the purely organizational structure. One disadvantage might be when the project is over, these people will have to leave the project. The project has come to an end, the handover. If you remember the project management process, the close out of the project management process, when that happens here, these people have no more jobs. That is one. Two, it's a more complex and expensive system to use. It's more complex and more expensive. So a lot of people sometimes don't want to use the purely organizational structure because of cost involved. Because if you see here, everyone that is present here is an expert in that area. They are experts in that area. Now, let's look at the last form of project structure, which is known as the metrics. Now, I'll make it very easy for you. Look at what I'm going to do now. What have I done here? I have just linked both structures together. Now, this is the project manager at the top. This is the project manager. This is the project manager. But what will I do now? I'm going to say this is the project manager. This is project manager 1. This is project manager 2. Now, what happens here is this project, the metric organizational structure is used only when 2 or more projects are going on at the same time. You cannot use the metric organizational structure when one project is going on. 2 or more related projects must be going on at the same time. And then you use the metric organizational structure. Let us take an example of the metric organizational structure. Again, let me use the common example of the 2010 Soccer World Cup. When the 2010 Soccer World Cup was in progress, they were building stadiums in different parts of South Africa. And I told you about the LOC, the local organizing committee, who was in charge of the entire Of the entire project. Now, each project had its own organizational structure, its own purely organizational structure, each project. And it was being, all project managers were reporting to one structure, which is known as the Local Organizing Committee, the LOC, for the project. So now there are advantages of the metric organizational structure, guys. There are advantages of the metric organizational structure. One advantage is the project manager remains the head of the entire project, the project manager. That is one. Two, it can only be used when two or more projects are going on at the same time. It can be an advantage, so that you don't waste money. And if two or more projects are going on at the same time, it means that there is a share of resources, share of capital, share of material resources, share of equipment, which saves the project some costs as well. It's an advantage. There's a share of resources. The project manager is at the top of the project, which means that it's easy to reach him. Communication lines are being drawn. It's easy to communicate with the top. And as well, the project's budget is going to be shared as well for all the projects that are going on at the same time. But as well, there is a disadvantage as I close this video. The disadvantage is it can only be used as well when one project is going on at a time. It cannot be used it can only be used when two or more projects, It cannot be used when one project is going on, which becomes a disadvantage. Two, it can become very complex to understand the metric organizational structure because you have different project managers that are running the different projects, and then you have just one project manager at the top. It becomes difficult for people to communicate. Thank you for watching. Click subscribe, like this video, and sit back for our next video. Thank you very much. Bye.